Hello and welcome to Clamp, the weekly podcast where we discuss all things related to creating, living, and making projects. I'm your host, Grant Alexander. Joining me as always is Adam Mackey and Jesse Ratfink. And this week, we want to talk about something. I was chatting with David Wood from DW Wood Builds, and we were chatting about different questions on the our Ask Jesse Anything. And he asked a question that I thought, you know what? That's not just a little tiny segment question. That's a topic in its own. And he was asking about, the old saying, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Right? And from that, I wanted to have a discussion. So I'm going to pass it over to you guys.
Which one of us needs to leave?
That's a good start. Well, I'll start it off by saying that I think it's a fallacy completely 100%, because there's never been a time where you're the smartest person in the room on everything.
That is a very good point.
Right?
It's funny you say that. So my wife has a cousin who is I don't know, like on the spectrum, I guess. And she always puts herself down and calls herself dumb and stuff. And I've said to her many times, just because you're not the smartest person on everything, there are so many things that you are a lot smarter at than other people. She works in a nursery, and she could tell you the scientific name of like every plant and everything. I said, I know nothing about plants. When it comes to plants, like, you're the smartest person in the room for me. Like that.
Right.
Just because you might not be intellectually as smart as some people, when it comes to the things that you're interested in, you are smart.
Yeah, 100%. And I I think like the only exception to wanting to be the smartest person in the room or feeling comfortable being that is if you're actively teaching a class. Because I tried to think, when have I ever felt that way? And even teaching a cooking class or a sewing class, I still have a little bit of doubt that I'm the smartest person in the room, but I should be, technically, if I am teaching. So, yeah, I thought about that a lot after you proposed the topic.
Well, even when it comes to if you're the teacher, like, this is actually like a problem I've seen with professors, is that they think they're the smartest. And they don't, like, some of them don't realize, like, some of these people are taking the class because they have to get the credit. Right? They don't need to, like, they're beyond this, but in order to get a degree in whatever field, they have to go through the motions of taking all the classes, right? And I've definitely seen where a student outmaneuvers a professor on on a calculus problem, and then it causes problems, especially if you get into a little bit of I don't know, the best way to say it is a dick measuring contest on these two people. And I just go, like, can you just get back to teaching us? Like, the things you guys are talking about have gone beyond the lesson. Can we bring it back? But
I think that's a good point, is that, like, you might think you're the smartest person in the room, but you need to be able to understand if you're not. Or, like, there's no need for that dick measuring contest. Like, okay, so they knew something you didn't. They've now taught you that. You need to be able to understand that you don't know everything.
Right. Well, I think being humble is one of the biggest things.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think pride is a big issue for a lot of people. Because I know so many people that will say, oh yeah, I know about that. Oh yeah, I know that. Instead of just saying, oh no, what is it? Just because they don't want to look stupid. And so I think some people have a lot of sort of internal issues that make them unreceptive to receiving new information. They just don't want to process it.
And I think that comes back to our education system. And I'm sure if Andy Pugh listens to us, he'll have a whole rant about this that I can hear later. But, when I think about the problem with the education system, you get constantly called upon and ridiculed by the teacher if you don't have an answer. Right? And I just go, like, well, this isn't, if they don't have an answer, then you should be, like, the teacher should be ridiculed because you didn't do a good job of getting that information to that student.
I deal with this now. So we have at my work, because like, I work on my own all day, every day. I never really ever see my shift manager or anyone like that. I sign on, do my job, go home. So every year we have to have what we call a competency assessment. So someone who is like a trainer or more of like a someone to make sure that we're doing our job properly. They're out scouting and stuff. They'll come with us for a couple of hours and they ask us questions, and it used to be an upskill. Oh, you don't know the answer to that? All right, well, let me give you the answer, make sure you know it, and all sorts of stuff. Because there's things I don't do for a few years and I forget how to do it or whatever. Now it's become more of a test. If you don't know the answer, you get marked wrong for it, and then you have to go oh, well, you didn't pass your competency assessment. Now you've got to go through training again or whatever. It's gone ridiculous. It used to be I never used to worry about the competency assessment because all right, cool. If I don't know it, I don't know it because I haven't done it for so long. So they'll upskill me. Now it's now I have to study for it. It's ridiculous.
It seems like they've taken it the wrong way, but I kind of get why they're doing it that way, because you work in a public service and they're scrutinized so much.
I understand that, but it's the things that we just never do that bothers me. They'll be oh, what, so the way we communicate with the driver, unless we talk on the handset, is we have a bell and we have bell codes. So it's sort of like Morse code.
Yeah.
And it'll be something that you never will ever use in your life, or I've been on the job for 10 years now, never had a fire on the train or anything like that, and we have a bell code for a fire on the train. And they'll say, oh, what's the bell code for fire on a train? I don't remember because I've never had to use it in my life, and then you get in trouble for it. I know one's a bit important, but I mean, there's some that are so dumb that
wouldn't you just get on the radio?
Exactly. Because the bell signal started before intercoms were a thing. It's the older trains didn't have intercoms, so we would keep the entire communication was through bells. But I use bells all the time. So when the doors close, I give the driver a bell to tell him it's okay to go, rather than call him up and say you can go.
I don't know. It does seem like I get. It's this. Anyways, that's not about talking about the smartest person in the room. So we'll get back onto the thing. And yes. I think Jesse had a really good, anecdote or about if somebody always thinks they're the smartest person in the room.
Maybe they're just a narcissist.
Right. And I think a lot of people are that way. And they have this and maybe I am too, because I often look around and go, is this really the room of people that are the best and the brightest? But I don't know. Maybe I'm also just dealing with a lot of idiots. I don't know. It's hard. The problem is it all depends on how you're measuring those people, right? So if you are going to a blacksmithing event and you are a master blacksmith and everyone else in there isn't, you might be unable to learn anything about blacksmithing there. You still might be able to, because people will do stuff weird and then go, wow, that's a whole new thing, but whatever, right? They don't do stuff traditionally and then they find a new way of doing things. But what I'm trying to say is you might enter a room and be unable to learn something about one particular skill, but you will never enter a room and not be able to learn something from someone.
I don't think I'm a narcissist, but to go back to what Jesse said before about the people that I know everything sort of thing, they don't I can't remember what you said, people to think
their pride stops them from admitting it.
That is 100% me. To take it back to making even, right? So the amount of not arguments, but the amount of times my wife has got annoyed at me because she'll be like, hey, could we do this? And I'm like, oh yeah, I could do that. And then it looks like shit, or I don't do a good job because I don't know how to do it, but I'm too prideful to say I don't know how to do it. And then she's like, why does it look like this? And I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, that pride is a thing. I think being humble is so great. And that's the opposite, I think, of pride. And that's I wish I was more humble. And I guess I learned, the biggest problem I have is I learn differently than a lot of ways that things are taught. And because I learn differently, I need things in writing, it helps a lot. That's why I love Instructables. I can read it. I read the steps. I need to read that step again. It's right there. I see where I stopped paying attention or where it stopped making sense, as opposed to a video where it's just like, oh, I backspaced 3 times and it got back 30 seconds, and then for some reason it went back a minute, and I'm like, now I have to watch this part that I already completely understand, right? And so things in writing make a lot of sense to me, and I feel like I've lost my train of thought, but that's why I often don't want to be in a room with a bunch of people learning, is because I learn differently. And so I feel like I can't
You need
learn
to be able
in
to go
those.
at your own pace.
And my pace is like frighteningly fast, generally speaking.
But what I mean is like you need to be able to like go back if you miss something or anything like that. If you're in a room full of people, you can't do that because like the teachers just go go go.
Right, and they're doing it at the lowest common denominator generally. Like they're doing it, the slowest person is getting, and that's it's nice that they get all the extra attention because the faster people don't need it. But like even when I went back to Maker Camp and Ethan and I were teaching that leather working course, there were different skill sets of people who had done things that were similar to leather, and some people had even worked with leather before, and so they were doing it faster, and other people had never done anything even remotely close to it, and they were working a lot slower. And so I would often take the people who were falling behind and take them to a separate table and kind of work it through so that they could get a little hands-on thing. But I felt at Maker Camp, not a single person who came there with pride.
Must be the
And
maker mindset.
I think it is. I think part of it is. And I think the people who have too much pride don't come to those events.
So I am a lot like you, Grant. I am a very fast reader. I absorb information incredibly fast when I read, and it is my preferred way to learn. And I have a hard time, working at other people's pace. And so I would say I'm not a very good team player. I don't do a lot of things in groups. But something that I have sort of had to have more patience with and have actually enjoyed having patience with is just talking to people about things they enjoy. Like, I don't need to know how they do the thing, but I want to hear about their process and why they like it. So I think I spend more time talking in vaguer terms about these things just because I don't think there's a single person I've met in my life that I couldn't learn something from, whether, it be like physically making something or something about their culture or language or, there's so many things. And I think it's just really important to be very open to it. And the maker community is amazing about that. And I think, that's why I love it so much and why I stay here.
I'm 100% on board with that. And I think listening to someone who's passionate about whatever they're talking about is immediately 100 times more engaging. Mm-hmm. I've listened to people that are passionate about something, talk about something I even know the story already. But because they're passionate, you get wrapped up into listening to it again. So yeah, I think that's a lot of the maker community is about, sharing. And even if you think you're the smartest person in the room about a particular topic, you're not in that room to say I'm the smartest. You're in that room to share so that other people can come up and become part with you. I don't know.
Well, and I think it's even important to share just for feedback sometimes, because again, like, you might not know everything or every way about this, whatever craft you're doing. So I don't know. I always enjoy, like, on Instructables when someone will be doing a woodworking project and then someone in the comments is like, I'm sorry, I don't want to be rude, but the way that you assembled that is actually much weaker than this way you could assemble it. And we'll kind of walk them through how to do it. I also enjoy that because sometimes you see an author that's super receptive and is just like, okay, well, I just winged this. Thank you for telling me. It's nice.
Right.
It's like Grant's reel with holding the hammer. Like all the comments are just like, you're doing it wrong. Not like, hey, like you should do it like this because of this or whatever. It's just like everyone just having a go at you.
And they're wrong. That's the big thing.
Well, no, I know they are, but I'm just saying, like, that's what people do, though. Like, they just want to put people down. They don't want to actually help them be better.
Well, this is where,
Yeah.
so on Facebook, I've been getting a lot of comments on all my reels. It's not just the hammer one, but all the reels, I get all the negative comments. That's where I've been trying to lean into a little bit, hoping to get the thing. But there's people who just go, your deck is going to break because of the way you did it. I'm like, well, it's not. It's like, your deck is going to have giant gaps in it. I'm like, as it dries out. And I'm like, I used a moisture meter to test my deck boards to see what moisture they were at, to set the appropriate gap. But yeah, I guess you're right because you were here, right? Like, but the way they approach it, they don't ask questions, and I think that's a big thing that's missing on social media these days is people don't say, "Hey, why did you do it this way?" And I could say, "Oh, because it was, or I was taught this way. What are you doing? Why are you doing it this way? Is it a different climate?" I've actually had a couple of really nice responses where people go, "I'm sure whatever you're saying is right for your climate and your deck boards, but just open your eyes to the fact that it might be right for his climate and his deck boards."
I could imagine the comments on my deck. Mate, it's 40 degrees outside and I live in Australia. What the hell do you think's going to happen? It can't dry out any more than it is.
All right.
Well, and I still maintain that people that leave the nasty ass rude comments, they are not people who share. Like those are always the people who do not understand how much time and energy goes into sharing something. And they just, backseat makers. They aren't really people that I pay a lot of attention to just because I don't think it's right for someone to ridicule someone else who put the time and effort in while they hide behind, no profile picture and just being a dick on the internet.
I know we're getting away from the topic, but it's like the comments on the YouTube videos. Oh, I could do that too if I had $30,000 worth of tools. Like that's like but like, no, you couldn't, because if you could be doing it without $30,000 worth of tools.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
The only thing I like when I see someone download something from the internet and then plug it into a 3D printer or a CNC, I go, yeah, if I had a 3D printer or a CNC, I could do that. But I go, right, and I saw what they did, but that's generally not what people are showing off, because those videos don't get any views anymore. Like they got views when they were brand new, but they don't anymore. But okay, so when we think about the smartest person in the room, there's other things that go along with it, like you're in the wrong room, but there's also like a lot of times people try and align themselves in different areas to try and elevate themselves by being the lowest subscriber number, whatever you're trying to become, right? You want to enter the room with all the masters because you're an apprentice, right? And I think that mentality, well, could actually help you grow faster, obviously, because you're going to be learning from a bunch of people. I think it's also like really selfish. And
I agree.
And I think a lot of people don't, it's selfish in a way, like they're trying to get out, they're trying to like just extract things from other people. And the other thing that is, it's like you see no value in other people at the lower levels. Right. And I look at, like, I watch a lot of smaller YouTube channels because I see a lot of things they're doing that are interesting and good that just aren't getting it because YouTube hasn't opened the faucets for them yet. It doesn't stop them making great videos with great points and great information. But I don't know. There's something to that, and I just go, you can learn from these little people too. Even if you're the biggest one in the room, they can teach you something.
Well, and I think it is so important to learn from like your community of peers and to sort of have an idea of the overall like trends and what's happening within your community. Because if you spend so much time sort of like copying the work of people who have they've like paved the path to success, you know what works for them, it's not necessarily going to work for you. Or,
Right.
you'll get big enough and people will just start saying, aren't you copying so and so? I see that all the time, especially with electronics and tech projects. Like people will see, the top 10 YouTubers, and then they start making their thumbnails like those YouTubers. And, they start only doing projects like those YouTubers do. Their color schemes are exactly like the other YouTubers. So people just, I think they get really fixated on, this person is the king of their craft and I must be exactly like them, instead of developing their own personal style and sort of learning new things from everybody, because you might find something that will totally change the way you do what you're doing from, someone you meet at a class who doesn't know anything either.
Exactly. And I feel it's like, I don't know. I think I was talking with Keith Drennan about Blackthorn Concepts and the Working Hands podcast, and I remember chatting with him about like why he felt like he didn't get anything out of Workbench Con, and it was because he doesn't want to learn from someone who made it 10 years ago, who's paved that path 10 years ago. He wants to learn from the people that are doing it now, that are in the trenches, together. He says he learned so much more from chatting with me about podcasts than, because we're both trying to get a good podcast going, right, and develop that listenership and that community. Then you're going to get, like, I could talk to the Making It people about what's making their podcast get the thousands upon thousands of downloads they get, but it won't be relevant at all to what I'm doing because I'm not there.
It's the same with YouTube too. Like people ask all these big YouTubers, like, how do I grow my channel? Well, like I like to make stuff has been around for 10 years. 10 years ago, you grew your channel a lot different. Now everyone's trying to be a YouTuber. It's not the same as it used to be. There's no point in asking someone that's already big. You need to ask the people that have just become successful.
Yeah. And I think that's where I think people can fall into the fallacy of thinking they need to be in a different room. Right.
For sure.
And I think if you actually looked around, you might see you've been in the right room all along and you just didn't realize it.
Yeah. I mean, and really, like, honestly, I will always say it, but like in any room, you should be able to learn something from somebody. Like, I don't know. I was not very good in school, and neither was my partner. And I think that's why we connect so well, because we're always learning about everything. We're constantly just like researching random stuff. We do much better just sort of like following our own brain instead of like a regimented sort of curriculum. And I don't know, I always mesh a lot better with people who want to know more things and who have questions about things that, I'm talking about or someone else is talking about. I just think it's so important to just remain open and not be so judgmental about, how people might appear to you. Because, you never really know what's going on inside somebody. They might come off as a complete know-it-all and kind of rude and standoffish, but if you actually talk to them about something, you might be able to find out that, like, I don't know, they do mini golf professionally on the weekends or something bizarre. I don't know.
Well, have you seen Ted Lasso?
No, my partner keeps telling me I need to, but I haven't.
Oh, I won't ruin the dart thing then.
But it's the same with a lot of different things. Even in The Office, and The Office is long gone, but all of a sudden they realize that one of the guys in The Office, Kevin, is like a poker champion, and he knows all about poker. And it's like those kinds of things where you go, you don't know what you don't know about people. But yeah, you can always learn something from someone. But I think it's finding out what that person is passionate about is the biggest thing.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I was thinking about with this smartest person in the room thing is that a lot of times you need to figure out why you entered that room in the first place. And what were your intentions, right? Because if you walk into a room with the intentions of judging everyone to figure out if you're the smartest person, you've walked into the wrong room. That's right. You have, right? Because you did it wrong to start out with. So maybe that's what the whole saying is actually supposed to be about. I don't know. I'm just making stuff up now. We're going to thank our Patreon supporters. I especially want to thank our F-Clamp level, Brent Jarvis from Clean Cut Woodworking, Vincent Ferrari from Digitally Creative, Scott from Dad It Yourself DIY, Joe Herdina, Lawrence from Maritime Knife Supply, Rich from Low End Design, and David Wood from DW Wood Builds. Thank you so much to all of them. Everyone who supports, no matter the level, gets access to our pre-show and after-show. And they're often a lot of fun. Maybe this time we talk a lot about what are we talking in the pre-show about? Technical difficulties. Maybe in the after show we'll talk about Jesse's alter ego on Instructables, and maybe we'll see. So if you want to sign up for that, you can go to patreon.com/clamp, and everyone who signs up there also gets a keychain made by yours truly. And now, CLAMPmendations.
CLAMPmendations.
Jessy isn't in the Google Doc.
No. So it's my turn. Okay.
So she doesn't know that she's first.
Yeah, I just realized that after you said it. I was like, oh no, I don't know the order. So my CLAMPmendation for this week is an album, actually. So SZA has out a new album, SOS, and I have been listening to it nonstop for a very long time now, since it came out, really. I discovered her just a few years ago, so this is my first real album release. It's been very exciting. I love her. She is my Beyonce for this year. I think it's going to be my top played on every streamer.
Nice.
My CLAMPmendation for this week is going to be a video that I haven't actually watched yet, but the thumbnail looks really cool, and I couldn't find CLAMPmendation, so. But it is a touch-responsive plasma-filled river table by a channel called Plasma Channel, and it looks really cool. I don't know if there's actually plasma in it, but they got an LED strip down a river table, and it looks really cool.
Yeah. Well.
And I've been trying to find new woodworking channels to watch, so I don't know if they are, but...
Well, they're the Plasma Channel, so they might just be a little plasma.
Might just be the one thing.
Yeah, it's definitely a cool looking table, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I'll have to look and see what plasma is all about. Well, I'm going to recommend everyone go check out a new podcast I just found, which is another maker podcast. And it's a Canadian podcast, two Canadian guys out from Alberta, actually, in Lethbridge, Alberta. It's called the Builder Sessions Podcast. And they've had some really great guests. And if you grew up in the same time period as me and watched Power Block TV on the weekend and watched cars and trucks, and they had on one of the hosts of Trucks, which was really cool to see and hear from, and it was just a very interesting. That was their second guest ever. Was someone from my childhood. So it was kind of cool to hear, but you should go check them out. The Builder Sessions Podcast. I tried searching for them on Podcast Addict and couldn't find them as a podcast, but found them through their episodes. So because they're a smaller podcast, they're not at the very top of the list. So try and go to the show notes if you want. The link will be there, or just search better than I did, I guess.
I found them right away in Apple Podcasts, so hopefully it's good for most people.
Maybe I spelt it wrong. That's what happened. I've done that. If you spell stuff wrong, sometimes the search results are just no, you don't. No, you're not getting there. All right. Well, then we're going to move on to our funnest segment we've ever had. Ask Jessy Anything. And this Ask Jessy Anything comes from Jacob Griffin at Griffin Makes on Instagram. And his question is, does being on Clamp mean that you have to recuse yourself from judging the Instructable contest that Grant, or I guess Adam, enters?
So the short answer is yes.
All right.
Ethically, I would feel gross about that. I don't really have a hand in contests anymore. I've moved away from building, managing, closing them, but I do still help with voting. So, yeah, if it ever came to a point where there needed to be a final call and one of y'all were in a tie with somebody, I'm out. I'm not helping with this because it's just, I take contests very seriously. It's been my job for a long time. And so, like, ethically, that's just gross. And I would definitely be stepping away.
Right. Well, that's unfortunate for me. 'Cause I was really hoping for the opposite answer. No, I would 100% let you win.
Well, here's the thing. Anyway, like, even if I did vote strongly in your favor and gave you a 9, that is one vote in like a sea of votes.
Yeah.
So it's also like, even though I won't move the needle a lot, I don't want to do it.
Yeah. Well, this is where I've always had a problem. So Instructables often like ask for volunteer judges, and I've always had like a problem where I go to like, oh, I've been invited to judge this one. I go look through it and oh, I know like 3 of the people in this one. It's like, what do I do? Like, how do I do it? And then I go through and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna do one of 2 things: either give them like 9s because they're like my friends, or judge them way harsher than everyone else because they're my friends. And that's like, I don't know if that's fair. So I often just don't.
It's like, oh, I'll vote for the people I don't know because then I'm not doing the wrong thing. But then you're actually hurting the people you do know because, like, yeah.
Yeah, and it's so hard to, because I have been doing this for, like, this has been a decade pretty much that I've been running contests. And like, yeah, you see the same names over and over and over. So I just practice voluntary name blindness, and everybody gets read through, and I compare all the supply lists together, all the photographs together, how well the instructions are written. And it's just like everybody gets judged on the same criteria, because as soon as I start paying attention to who is who, yeah, it feels bad.
If you want to win an Instructables contest, and this is from my perspective as someone who's won and not from the judging perspective, there is like an Instructables on how to judge an Instructables contest. Read that and then do what they're judging you on. It's not that hard, but that seems to be the way I've done well.
Yeah, doing that, reading the judging instructable, reading the how to write an instructable like class I put together, or even just looking at like the top viewed instructables in the category that you're working in.
Yeah.
Those are really good ways just to see like how, like what bar you need to cross. Yeah.
Right. I always, whenever I'd enter an Instructables and that was like this year's X, like Halloween or Christmas or whatever it was, I would always go and look at, if it's, 2023 Halloween, I'm going to look at 2022 Halloween, right? Like it doesn't, why wouldn't you? The information's available. See what they liked. See if you can play to that angle with whatever your project is.
Mm-hmm. That is always my advice to people.
Yeah. So there we go. If you guys want to win, and it's good money to win, and in Canada, it's tax-free. I know in America, you guys aren't free from taxes. You guys get taxed on winnings, so sorry that your freedom isn't as free as Canada. But that's just the way it is, I guess. But, yeah. So, we're going to continue this Ask Jessy Anything. It's kind of been replacing Adam's Slang of the Week because we haven't been getting enough slangs. But we actually we already have one for next week from David Wood. So we'll be asking that question next week. But we would love to have as many as we can get to Ask Jessy Anything, and they can be on any topic. And we actually, I screen them I don't like hit her off, just hit her up on the live on the air. I'd like to give them to her ahead of time in case there's something she doesn't want to talk about. So feel free to ask any question, and if we don't like it, we just won't answer it on the podcast.
Works for me.
Yeah. So I want to thank TF Turning for the theme song. We've been actually working with him to get a new theme song because we got a new host. We need a new theme song. And so look forward to that because I don't like the newest. I don't like the latest one. I'll be honest. I like the one before this one better.
Well,
But
the newest one was made from the votes of the listeners of the
yeah,
style
well,
they wanted.
Ooh,
yes.
you're in trouble now, Grant.
No, I mean, like, it doesn't
second place
really
was
suit.
polka. So
Yeah, I think the votes were swayed just to tease us.
yeah, well, that's second place was polka. So it's not.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. So
Got
everyone,
trolled
you
hard
guys,
by our listeners.
yeah. I don't know why they want to listen to it. But the other thing we've been doing, I wanted to mention, we've been trying to up our YouTube game and our Reels or Shorts game. And so we've been putting out little shorts and Reels on Instagram of little clips. And if you're ever listening to an episode and you thought something really moved you and you think it would be a really good clip, a little 15 to 30-second clip, let us know. You know, if there was a part of the episode that really you went, that was a great point, let us know, and we'll grab that out. We'll even shout you out for pointing it out. So we really appreciate all of our followers and how much they're committed to Clamp and clamping things. And if you want to find us, you can find us on all the usual social media places by just searching for the Clamp Podcast. And until next time, cheers, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.